A far-right journalist takes a literal swipe at another journalist. Bernie Sanders is receiving calls to, quote, get the squad under control, get his children under control, actually. And there's going to be an illustrated version of the Mueller report.
So joining us via Skype to discuss this media's handling of it all is Katie Halper, host of The Katie Halper Show, co-host of The Useful Idiots, a Rolling Stone podcast. Great to see you, Katie. And finally, Crystal's here to join us.
Yes, I've missed you.
Reunion,
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Did you guys talk about Crystal Liza while I was gone, though?
I think we did
Of
twice.
course we did.
Alive?
Of course,
Okay, good.
yeah. I think both times. Yeah, we had to. We have to hold,
All right.
hold
All right,
it
we got to
down.
start off, I think,
feel
with a little bit of a
satisfied then.
somber thing. So, but first of all, Glenn Greenwald, friend of the show, he was involved in an altercation, basically was on a far-right YouTube channel, pro-Bolsonaro channel. When he was in Brazil, he was slapped basically
He was
on the
attacked
air,
during the
attacked on the
interview.
air. And
Yeah.
Buzzfeed wrote it up, Katie, as a far-right journalist took a swing at Glenn Greenwald on a live radio show. But I don't believe that was the original headline. Just walk us through that.
Their tweet said Glenn Greenwald got into a fistfight on a live radio show, which
Right.
is ridiculous. And I actually tweeted that, if BuzzFeed had been around during the Holocaust, their headlines would have said, like, Jews get into a scuffle in Warsaw Ghetto.
Oh, God.
I mean, it's just so... I did have fun with that one.
You went there, yeah.
You can go there. We
Yeah,
can't.
I went there. I can't go there. Yeah, cashing in that Jew, Holocaust survivor lineage privilege. And imagine them being like, Anne Frank, Amsterdam's biggest introvert. But
Yeah, right.
in all seriousness, they did. I mean, this is a typical both sidesism. It's actually worse than both sidesism. And just for context, in case people don't know, Glenn Greenwald is a obviously very, very brave journalist who lives in Brazil with his husband and their 2 kids. And Bolsonaro, who's the president, is really was part of the military dictatorship. So he's seriously part of a very scary tradition in Brazil. He's openly praised torture. He's praised torturers. He said that, he said extremely racist, sexist, homophobic things. And he's gone after Glenn by name, as have his sons, because Glenn, one of the things that Glenn does at The Intercept is they've exposed all these really explosive scandals involving the Bolsonaro family. And so what happened is that Glenn went on a show, and last minute they asked if, I guess they booked another guy, this right-winger, this guy Nunez, Augusto Nunez.
Mm-hmm.
And on this same show before, Nunez said that a judge should look into the kids' status, how they're living.
Right. Because Glenn and his husband work.
Both work, right? So it was a homophobic, sexist thing. Like, what are you going to do without having a mom at home? Protect the children. Glenn then on this episode called him a coward, and then because he is a coward, he slapped Glenn. But even, in this article that was much better, for instance, in The Guardian, the way they presented it was kind of a both sidesism thing. They talked about how it's an example of the increasing polarization in Brazil. And this is not increasing polarization. This is a neo-fascist president who has the entire military behind him and has a history of being involved in military dictatorship and in torturing people and in disappearing people, and really scary that he's the president.
Right. Well, in BuzzFeed, BuzzFeed kind of has 2 lanes. They have like real journalistic lane, and then they have like, here's a list or a spectacle of some sort or a quiz.
Yeah.
And they decided to put this story in the latter category and write it up as like a spectacle rather than actually talking about the things that you did and the sort of like what this means. And Glenn, this guy is so courageous to be in that country doing this work, exposing the things that he's exposing, and willing to go on this show with this guy who was essentially insinuated his children should be removed from his household. Just imagine the courage that takes. Meanwhile, people here are like bitching about Glenn going on with Tucker Carlson. It's just, it's just like, this guy is doing actual journalism and putting his life at risk, literally, and you're mad because he's going to go on Fox News?
It's outrageous.
Please.
Yeah,
by the way, he took his appearance on Fox News to talk about Bolsonaro. So that's a great example of what he's doing. This is one of the reasons you can say he goes on Tucker Carlson. And people like to throw around the word fascist, but there's actual fascism or neo-fascism or fascism is much more of a threat in Brazil than it is here.
Right, which is a point that Glenn likes to make as well. Right. So another friend of the show.
Husband, sorry, just really quickly. His husband is a congressman who came into power because the congressman he replaced feared for his life because there's so many hate crimes and so many. And their good friend Marielle Franco was a congresswoman who was killed in cold blood, just assassinated on the street. So the people not coming to Glenn's defense because. For whatever reason, because he went Tucker Carlson is really pathetic, and they should have the courage that he has.
Absolutely.
Indeed, a modicum of it.
Yeah, modicum, yeah.
So another friend of the show was also attacked, though in a much less serious way. But online, Megan Day, who's a writer for Jacobin, tweeted something very reasonable about Ayanna Pressley's endorsement of Elizabeth Warren breaking with the squad and not endorsing Bernie Sanders. She said Ayanna Pressley hasn't been consistently aligned with the rest of the squad. For example, in July, AOC, Omar, and Tlaib voted no on a resolution to condemn the civilian-led boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign against Israel. Pressley voted yes. Clear statement of fact. It is what it is.
Innocuous observation that we have also made here on the show.
Right. It's like kind of obvious. Like they're not a monolith. She's got a little bit of a different approach. They're over here. This makes sense. And Charles Pierce, writer for Esquire, chimed in about Megan's tweet. Bernie, you really have to get the children under control. They're doing you no good. Now, this is the same type of guy, of course, who would call Bernie Sanders supporters Bernie bros and call out sexism everywhere, et cetera. And yet here he is launching this very sort of paternalistic, nasty attack on Megan.
Yeah. It's totally condescending. I mean, it's very hard to not see this as sexist, honestly. I mean, the most charitable read of this, just to be extra nice, would be that he didn't realize the sexist, misogynist trope that he was perpetuating by infantilizing a woman. But I mean, what is this? You can't claim. I actually tweeted male ally. I retweeted it and tweeted male ally. But it's not like this isn't like. It's one thing to call kind of hyperbolic, oversimplifying, ad hominem attack childlike, and it's one thing to tell Bernie to get his the children under control if you're referring to something like that or something that is really attacking Ayanna Pressley. But this is a very measured, as you said, fact-based take. It's not controversial. There's no animus in it. And also, it also speaks to a larger problem, which is that Sanders is, for some reason, responsible for anything that anyone writes about him who's ever expressed support of him. And there's been like a real effort to portray Jacobin as this kind of arm of the Sanders campaign. And, you don't see anyone doing this with the abusive behavior that we see from, Warren supporters or Clinton supporters, Kamala supporters. I haven't seen any of these people speak out against the abuse on Nina Turner, the abuse of Breonna Joy Gray, by people who are actually have a lot of access to people like Neera Tanden, for instance. We see Neera Tanden retweeting these people who say abusive things. I mean, this guy, I don't even want to name them because I don't want to give them attention, but people who say Islamophobic things, sexist things, violent things, call Bernie a fake Jew, make threats against people. So this is really a disturbing double standard. And of course, Charles Pierce, I mean, this is just embarrassing. Like, try to hide your misogyny or your sexism, get it under control a little bit more.
Right.
He needs to get that under control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was just so condescending. But
it's so condescending. And who are
right.
you? You need to get these boomers under control.
I
Sorry
agree.
to play.
I agree. No, I'm with you. You're speaking my language.
And my parents are boomers, and they're awesome. So it's not all boomers.
It's a mindset.
No, I'm gonna say all boomers. I'll go there, but that's just me. All right, so we also got to talk about the Washington Post grift. I just couldn't believe this. I saw it earlier in the week. They are selling illustrated comic versions of the Mueller report after they made millions of dollars selling the actual Mueller report with analysis from their reporters. I mean, this is just a boomer grift, speaking of boomers, by putting it in like a Barnes & Noble checkout aisle, and it's something somebody will get, like a Rachel Maddow view or grandma for Christmas.
Coffee table.
It's such a grifting maneuver. I am so disgusted by it.
I just got the perfect idea for Sagar's Christmas present.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Katie.
Exactly.
Yeah. If anybody's watching, please send me that.
It's just pathetic. I mean, what's the next genre they're going to try to move into? Like, I don't know, like baseball cards with Mueller on it, or collecting cards, like, I mean, it's like see Mueller fail, see Dick run, see Jane run, see Mueller fail, see Mueller disappoint, make liberals lose their minds, cause heads to explode. That's what we should have a comic book on. That would be great.
God.
Just have a comic book on that. That's more dynamic. That's more action than what we saw.
The real story.
Way to animate what Mueller did,
Right.
Well, I think you guys are wrong. I think this is going to be the thing that finally convinces those Republican senators to convict. That's my prediction. I made it here.
Impeach.
Just watch.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
All right. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.